It's now time for Monster Soup, with your really fun at parties host, Dave Spencer, and his level-headed co-host, Brian McKinney. These dudes will explore all the crazy mysteries roaming off forest and deserted hallways. After all, monsters are real. It's Monster Soup time right now. Get it while it's hot. And now your hosts, Dave and Brian.
Hello. Welcome to Monster Soup. It's a kitchen of conversation for misfits, cryptids, and these kids. I'm David Spencer, your golden retriever host, and with me, as always, my co-host Brian. In the streets, they call him the Butch Bandito, but we call him Brian McKinney.
Get it while it's hot. Let's say here. You know.
All right. This week we are gonna talk about everyone's favorite little cryptid, Bigfoot. We're just gonna go through some stories and everything like that. As far as like some of our favorite tales, some of our personal stories that we've heard, because we don't have anything personal that we've done. But yeah, just the reason why the reason for the season, the good stuff. I'm going camping this weekend, by the way, so I'm just gonna be awfully squatching.
Are you camping or are you squatching?
I'm just camping with the family. We do a Halloween trip every year, where we go to like, it's just there's tons of stuff going on, like, you know, cornhole tournaments, and somebody's making like community soup that you just kind of drop stuff into, and then there's like dance parties at night at you know, hay rides, all the fun stuff for the kids, and you know. I say for the kids the whole time, there's gonna be like, I'm so bored.
You're gonna be the one having the good time, and they're gonna be bored out of their minds.
Yeah, which I'll probably also be like, oh my god. I told Patty that my success story on being enjoying camping is to be dangerously caffeinated, like, because like most of the time I'm just like, I'm so just like zapped when I get there. I'm just kind of like, and I think if I'm just like extraordinarily like caffeinated, I'll just be like, what are we doing? Let's go. That's my nice pocket where I'm like, this world is my oyster. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm doing this week.
Before we get going too far into this week's show, I did have a little bit of feedback that we received from last week's show. Yeah, I got a message from the Florida Skun Cape, who did not appreciate the way he was portrayed on the episode. He said they got a lot of stuff going on down there in Florida, and he'd appreciate a little positive speak if possible. But on a positive note, I did hear from the Wendigo, who really did appreciate the positive comments we had with him, and he did want us to know that his date with the Wisconsin Hodang went very well.
Oh, I'm so glad he found happiness. That's so good. That's fantastic. You know, actually, so I'm going to go through one of these because one of my videos is from the Florida Skun Cape, and there was one, he just looked so sad. There was one, he was just like throwing this like bark into the water, and I was like, and I remembered all the things we were talking crap about him last week, and I was like, he's just so sad in that swamp. That's very funny.
He's going to get nice and wet tonight. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, man. I know. You know, we shouldn't have been knocking him. He's going through having a hard time out there right now. It is
shout out to all the Florida people. Good luck.
I saw a freaking weatherman crying. I was like, I don't know if this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Like, weathermen don't cry over weather. Like, this is terrible. Like, it's just turning into like the worst thing. I don't know if is it unprecedented or
like, yeah, it's supposed to be one of the worst ones. And coming in after what's it been, a week and a half since the last one, a lot of the same areas are going to get hit apparently, and I think it's going to be like a Category 4 when it hits, but it's supposed to be very large. It's a great big storm, so it could affect lots and lots of people. So
yeah, it's just more like people just haven't had time to like reset, and they're just like, okay. I mean,
they barely got their streets and their yards cleaned up, and that stuff's going to be everywhere again, and whatever is left of their houses is probably going to be gone after this one.
I just think that stuff, it's just so, it's weird to live in this era though, because I'm watching like TikToks of people just like doing like a thing, like a guy's just like in a kayak in his living room, like just like being like, well, this is what's like unbothered to a level that's just like, dude, you're in a kayak in your living room, and not like kind of near the floor. Like he's up, like up, like at couch level. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's just like a weird time to be living, that like that stuff just turns into like, wow, that's so weird. And he's just like, I hope it doesn't reach the light switches, which I don't know enough about electricity to know like where the worst part of water reaching would be. I would assume any part of your fuse box, but as opposed to like, I don't know, it's just wild. But
I would think it would all short out, before it would really do much of anything, but who knows?
I didn't really.
No electrician.
Yeah. You're asking. I mean, I did rewire my basement, but I knew very little. I didn't go into the fuse box because that's where Dave knows he's not good at stuff. It's just like, hey Dave, why does nothing work now? I'll be like, oh, it's because I added a light. I'm doing my best. Okay, so this week I wanted to talk about Bigfoot. Like he's kind of, the reason, like I said, the reason why we kind of started or do all this. Essentially, we talked about this in the first episode. Brian for years had told me about Bigfoot, and I was just like, yeah, okay, like that sounds cool, but at the end of the day, like I don't think I really like totally believed him. I was just kind of like, I wasn't like on his side. I was just kind of like listening. I always kind of thought of it as like, oh, I remember that from like back in the, when I was a kid seeing the Patterson Gimlin film. I have no idea what that was. And then just listening to a series about Bigfoot and being like, oh my gosh, like this is really cool. And just like hearing all the like the evidence pop up and things like that, and you kind of go like, oh, I think there might be some like weight to this. I think to any layman they would probably say that it is a guy in a suit, like all that stuff, but there's so much more science behind what we perceive. I think we just perceive it to be more fantastical than maybe like we assume that like a Bigfoot would walk a certain way, and when they walk like a guy, like it's just like, well, that's just a guy. Yeah. So but I don't know, but there's so many little like things that, I mean, I don't know if they like know them or it's just like enough information, like the people that we talk to that are just, with the tree knocks, I think is the one thing that like I was like learning about, that was, I'm just which when I did my little 5 a.m. trek, we went to Salt Fork. I remember like doing the tree knock thing with like, a big thing. I was like, maybe 5 a.m. is when they come out. They knew not. They didn't want anything to do with me. But yeah. I
don't think they were, out looking for a guy, drunk doing his 5 a.m. run. Like, look at this idiot.
Look at it. You just watch me from a distance. Like, yep, happens every year. We get one of these guys. Old, we call the
old Dave's out running around again.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that it come with all this. I mean, even just like doing some research on like these different sightings last night, just seeing like a little bit of new tech. I think I was saying a lot about like new tech not being used as much, and I think the more you dig into it, you see that like a lot of people are using this tech, which also it's like counterproductive, because it's like if they are using all this tech, like trail cams and stuff, and we haven't seen one, I think there's a very good argument to say like, well, maybe there's no weight to this, but at the same time, you get people who go like, I know what I saw, I know what I feel, and I always think there's weight to that, just from like what everybody has told us, from all that stuff. Again, it's fantastical, it's cool. There's this stuff's been going on for hundreds of years, people talking about it, but yeah. So I wanted to start off with talking about the Patterson Gimlin film, because that one is the the Mecca one, but I think
the classic,
the classic. Well, I mean, it wasn't the first time that it was mentioned. When I was doing some research, it was like obviously the 1800s. Well, I mean, if you want to back it up, I'm sure that we could explain some other sighting that was like way back then. But as far as like documented, like this is.
It was the video really was what put it on the map. I mean, there's lots of sightings before that, but that's where people could actually see, what they were talking about. That's, the one that sticks out for everybody, based on the video. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a lot of more people would just be like, oh yeah, that's just you could just say, I saw a half man, half, gorilla monkey thing in the woods. And what was that? And then like, being able to try to describe that, it's just like, well, that was probably obviously a hunter. Like, what are you talking about? Or a bear, basically you're describing a bear or, a gorilla. And he's like, no, it's in between. And it's like, okay, whatever. So like a lot of those sightings kind of like were bubbling up. And then that was like here's the evidence. and then just kind of people getting electrified by that, and then a lot of people, pushing it off, and then them one guy even coming out and saying, "I made the suit," which is, for all, if we're going to use all the information we have in front of us, that drops a lot of people off. They're like, well, there's a guy and he says he made the suit.
And of course, that eliminates every single thing that's ever happened, because this one guy made that suit and did that one thing, and basically, ruins it for everything else,
Yeah.
Because he clearly did every sighting that everyone's ever had,
Yeah.
So, well, it's not real. It was just that one guy this whole time for hundreds of years.
I mean, that is the big problem with like hoaxers and stuff. I mean, there was one case, but I think it was back in like the 2000s, where a guy was like, I found him, and then ended up being like a carcass, and then he said he found another one, and he was taking it on tour, and they found out it was like a couple things. I forget. He like mashed together all these animals and was like, oh yeah, it's a thing. So like, it's like stuff like that just keeps making. And I mean, we've heard people's anger about hoaxes enough times where you're like, oh my God, like they're just like, I just stop. And at the same time, it's like, I understand that, like, because I was having a conversation with my friend this weekend about ghosts, and he was just like, well, the thing about ghosts is like, they don't exist. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what about people who say that, they do exist, or they're real? And he was just like, but they're not real. And I was like, yeah, but you can't like discount what they saw, like, or what they heard or what they felt. Like, that's just like part of it is being there and being like, this is what I saw and this is what I've heard. And then, I've told that a couple stories about just what people have seen and things that my mom and has like relayed to me, regardless of her later schizophrenia, which I guess could also accumulate to maybe you didn't see anything.
Yeah, she might not be the best example, but yeah, I mean, we've talked to lots of people who, have had just weird, ghost stories, seen things, heard things that don't make any sense, that, scared the living crap out of them. And it's like, well, why they're making this up? They're not, something, scared them like that,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would say, like, with the Patterson Gimlin film, that maybe it's not true because they were specifically looking for Bigfoot, but it's like, yeah, well, that's who's going to find Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. So, I get the whole, that whole aspect of it, where, they're like, they were looking for it, they were trying to capitalize on it. But yeah, they were like one of the first people to go out there and look for it and actually find some real evidence, and they had video of it. That's what lots of people are doing now. And they were just kind of the first to do it and the first to capture something. And if that is a hoax, then it's really been the greatest hoax of them all, because to this day, that happened, in 1967. It's still people are arguing over it, because they can't definitively say one way or another. I mean, they can't disprove it essentially at this point,
Yeah. I mean, that's essentially where it's at. It's like the doubt that, if you know like the full science of it, there's so much doubt there, like as far as like musculature, like, and like the curvature of it, and like the way there's like details. And I think there's like, if you stabilize that footage and you go like, well, there's something there to that. Obviously, like, it's shaky cam, that whole thing, and it's only like 15. The only thing that like kind of throws me back to is like this is the most clear footage that I think exists out there, that I can think of off the top of my head, and it's like the first one. So like that's what's all that does throw me a little bit.
Yeah, and they they had a professional camera, and they were apparently they knew how to use it. I mean, a lot of the time we get when I'm filming stuff in my backyard, it's shaky cam because I can't film anything. Or you see some of these where some they're looking at what they think is a deer, or maybe there's a deer there too, or whatever, but they're looking, and all of a sudden they see like a Bigfoot, and they're like, oh crap, and then like it gets all shaky and they run away because they're scared. You're not gonna sit there and be like, oh yeah, this is what I'm out there looking for. This usually, a lot of these people are coming across it and they're not anticipating it. It scares the crap out of them. If I was out at my backyard and all of a sudden there was a Bigfoot standing there, I'd take off running too, and there wouldn't be very clear footage.
I think if I videoed anything, I was actually just trying to video myself walking with my daughter yesterday, and I was doing a time lapse, and the whole thing is just I actually, the most of the footage I found last night, it all was just like what was it? It's like they saw it, and then it's just camera down, run. which I thought was very funny. It's like no one's sticking around. They're just like, and I'm out of here. A lot of them weren't even filming that at the time. There was like, hey, we're these two guys were hunting, and they had like a really good video. Some of them were like really far away, and I'm like, that could be anything. But based off of like, just like if you do. What is the math? It's like, well, that tree is this tall and it's this big, and I think it's 7 feet tall. You do all that math, and you go like, these are much bigger than it. It doesn't look impressive, but it is kind of thing. Which again,
and not all of them are 10 feet tall. Especially if they're youth and they're growing, or a female could be smaller. But people aren't all the same size, and children aren't the same size as adults. And I think the thing that would kind of freak me out. More of even just the height is if you see one and it's like, oh yeah, well, it's only 5 feet tall, but it's 5 feet wide too. It's like it's way wider and thicker than a normal person. People aren't that thick. When they're 10 feet tall and weigh 800 pounds, that's one thing. But when they're half that size, that's still enormous.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't know, but so yeah, that's the biggest one. I'm not going to show that one because I think everybody. That's like almost the one where I forget, there's like a frame number for it. But whereas he's swinging back, that's like the picture that we all know and of like the silhouette. That is a very specific silhouette. But I am going to share one that I saw last night.
The patty, back into the left or back into the right.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm going to share my screen for the audience that's watching. And we'll just kind of describe what's happening here. There we go. All right. So this happened in Utah. I forget what's this. If you could see, like, this is two guys are in the woods. They're kind of they were doing something else. They were like just kind of hiking and videoing, and they realized there was like something in the distance, and it's they're looking through the trees. And they think it's a bear at the time. They're just kind of like, oh, look, there's a bear over there. Oh, look, that bear. That's such a cool bear. And then all of a sudden they're just, still watching it, like, oh, looking cute, nice fall weather out here. And then all of a sudden it just stands up, and then they're like, gotta go. Which, that's usually how it all ends. But like, those are really cool. I mean, obviously, like, you can't see any of the details and all that stuff. So that's where that stuff kind of, you go like, oh, I wish you'd be able to like get a little closer, or there wasn't like 300 trees in the way.
And Bigfoot or bear, either way, that's the same reaction you're gonna have. If that thing stands up and starts, you think it's coming towards you, you're like, I'm out of here, see ya.
Yeah, I mean, let's see if I can scrub to like where he stands up, because I mean, like, if I think, like, is that? Ooh, that's where he runs. Yeah, I mean, like, you can see a pretty distinctive thing. I mean, this is in Utah. So what is it? I don't know where. I forget where. I just kind of grabbed all these at once, so they all kind of blur together. But yeah, they were just kind of walking along, and they were like, "Yeah, this is that's just a bear." And all of a sudden, it wasn't a bear, and it got really scary. And they were just like, "We gotta go." I mean, either way, it's either a bear or a homeless guy. So you gotta, or a Bigfoot or a homeless guy.
Yeah.
either way
you're running. Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, that thing's probably gonna kill you. But yeah, it was. Stuff like this is really cool. I don't know the validity of any of these. So the ones I show today are just ones that I kind of found and thought were interesting. Whether they've been disproven later is besides the point. I think it's just kind of to show the different kind of varieties of the ones. But I love ones like this where they're kind of just like, we're going to do something else, and all of a sudden, oh hey, Bigfoot, and we're out of here. And then I have another one. Let me see if I can find this one. Let me show. I'll bring it up. Oh. Looks like stop presenting. So this is the one where I was talking about. So this is the Skun Cape one, the sad Skun Cape. Let me present again. He's just poor guy. Yeah. So I little shout out to the Skun Cape again. We're so sorry for the things that we said about you. But yeah, I mean, like, so a guy just kind of like in the middle of the woods, filming. I don't know if this guy was a purveyor of the Bigfoots. I'm assuming he's out in the middle of nowhere. But it shows a large black figure just kind of hunched over. And the longer you look, you can kind of like start seeing that he's just taking pieces of bark and just tossing them in the water. And he's just having the most bored time hanging out. I love this little caveat. He's like, I honestly, I swear this wasn't a jump cut. my camera stopped accidentally. So yeah, that's where he's just like tossing bark in there. So for those of you just listening, there's just like a character past the tree line, or past this like line of trees, kind of in the middle of a swamp, just tossing bark, and like you would when you're bored, just kind of hanging out, just kind of like throwing rocks. But they're of course throwing a hole.
His family probably made him go camping, and he's just like, I'm bored out of my mind. Let's
this
go
is me this weekend.
Just skip a couple rocks, we'll just hang out here.
Yeah, just
I'm just gonna stand here stinking up the place.
I wonder if this is like the angsty teen Skun Cape. He's just like,
yeah.
Whatever, mom. Mom told me to go to the swamp world.
I think that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
If you look closely, you can see the swoop eye hair going over it. It's like,
he's got all that fringe in his hair, in his face.
Yeah. Don't waste your time. I can almost hear the Blink 182 playing. You don't understand me. So yeah, I love this footage. I mean, like I think at one point he does see him and then he takes off. I don't know. I don't remember if this is one of those takeoff ones. I mean, it goes on for a while. He's able to just kind of film this guy. Again, it could just as easily. Oh yeah, that's right. He stands up and then he's just like out of here. So that it's just an extension of part 2 of the last one where he's like, I know, which would be the most terrifying thing in the world. Yeah, because
you're like, to realize, is that you're focusing in, and all of a sudden it stands up right in front of you, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. So there was that one, and did you have one that you wanted to show or talk about? Sorry, I was just kind of like doing.
Well, I don't know if you want to go through the videos first, then we'll go to just some of the kind of the famous ones I wanted to talk about.
I have some quick ones that I kind of just like absorbed over time or through the night that weren't super. There wasn't a lot going on in them, but like just enough. These are the ones that like I don't think are super interesting because I don't think they're at least worth noting. So like things like this, I don't know how much like weight I don't think anybody should really put into him because it could be anything. But so this one, like basically like he's teaching his son how to fire a gun, and as soon as he fires the gun, you can see up in the top right where the snow is. There's a little figure when he shoots the second time. You can see a figure get up and move. It's where the snow is. Is that when it happened? I forget when it happens. Maybe, okay, it's right when he shoots, and then if you look where the snow is, there's like a little character that just runs across. Did you see that?
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, that could be anything. But what they're saying is like we didn't notice anything there, and it kind of got spooked and moved. And then experts and stuff. Again, a lot of this stuff is just based off of where people kind of say, like, I know better, and that's what it is. So
yeah, that obviously could be staged, but I think to me that adds a little more validity because they're not saying what's going on; they're doing their own thing, and they don't notice until afterwards. Yeah, they don't take off running it or do anything; they just keep doing what they're doing. Then afterwards, when they're watching their kid, video the kid shoot, they see this thing in the background.
Yeah.
To me, that seems a little more realistic. And obviously that's could be staged, but.
Maybe that is it rides the line on hoax and like just being like, well, there's something to this. I mean, and if they literally were like, we didn't know there was a guy back there, and at no point, I mean, that's one of those like you really talk to a guy, and if somebody told me that story, I think I'd be more inclined to like believe them, because they could kind of tell you with their like mannerisms, like whether or not they hired Randy from down the street to run across, like hey, wouldn't it be funny if. But like if somebody's like, listen, I was shooting fire, I don't know why I gave him not an accent when he's telling the proper story. I was like, hi, what's your thing? But if he's just like, because we've talked to so many people that are just kind of like, they tell you the story, and I'm like, I have no reason not to believe you. Like you have so much conviction in your story, and there's so many like details, and like you're not trying to sway me or anything. I mean, obviously we're in the space to like talk about weird stuff, but like we've never felt inclined to be like, oh, we should make one up next year, just so we can be part of the conversation. Yeah. Like everybody's, there's so many stories to go around. You could just be like, I'd love to go out and experience something.
There's no shame in being like, yeah, I'm into this stuff, but I haven't seen anything yet. I mean, that's just like last week when we talked about when we thought we finally saw a UFO or something, and then how disappointed we were when we found out it wasn't. But it was like we're not gonna sit there and lie about it. It was like that's not what it was. You know?
Yeah. So for this one, this guy has like tons of ATV videos. So this one just happens to be one that he was just like, actually, let me back it up a little bit. He's just driving through a creek. Or I don't know what that would consider just a river. There's tons of rocks. But a lot of his content is just ATV content. And he just happened to, on this day, while he's driving through the river, there's a guy in the back, like in the tree line, like right where the river kind of stops. You can see a guy kind of walking across the top of the river in the back. And the guy's just like, look, which again, I don't know the full context of this. I just thought it was interesting. Apparently it's not the only time he's seen it. It's just the first time he's caught it on video. So anything could be part of that. I just thought, I think that stuff is very, very cool. Because it always just happened to be a guy who's out in the woods, but those are the guys that go out in the woods,
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, it makes sense that he'd be out, in the river on his ATV doing his thing. That's, that dude probably does it every weekend,
Yeah. This one I actually thought was really cool. So these guys they're out hunting, and this is them just like freaking out afterwards. They're kind of just recapping it. But here, I'll try to check it. So they're just out in the woods. They're they're hunting specifically, and there's just one right there in front of them, and he kind of moves away, and the guy's just like, get the camera. So he literally grabs it and it's just like chases after it, and I don't remember if he catches it or not, or after that. I think that's what he got was that, and this is him just chasing after it. But I mean, what we know is once you see them, you don't re-see them. Like they get out of there. Like they know how to duck and move. And I mean, if it gives any validity to this situation, when we were younger, we would play Manhunt, and I don't know if anybody's played Manhunt before, but basically, like, you go and it's hide and seek with rocks and sticks, and you just run around. You run around, and when you try to like get people, you just like you throw a rock or stick at them, and you don't have to tag them, or it's not hide and seek. It's hide and seek and tag. So you have to tag them with like a rock or a stick, and that's how that works. I think people play a little better versions of it now, where they just kind of go. I think
they call it like paintball now, or
yeah.
people with their airsoft guns and stuff like that.
Yeah, but when you're poor,
yeah,
you just play with rocks.
We used to do it with like buckeyes and rocks and stuff,
Yeah, but so what I remember is that my one friend would play, and we could not see him. I mean, he was across the river, and we just could not see him. And he even like called out to us, and we just, I mean, some people are just good at hiding. So this could be some. I mean, if you live in the woods, you know how to like kind of drop down. But yeah, these guys are just like, oh my god, like this way. I think that they show it. Let me see. But yeah, so
the thing that I always think out, when you see these things and they're like, unless they're totally in on it, and they're like, oh, it's probably just a guy in a suit. I wouldn't be out in an area where people, they're hunting, and be wearing a suit and take a chance on getting shot just to be funny and unless everybody's in on it, I'm not going out there to do that. You get shot over pranks,
That was actually the scariest part about when I did my 5 a.m. Bigfoot run, was being like, oh crap, hunters exist. No. So this is an eagle cam. Basically there was filming an eagle, and then all of a sudden, this one is very skeptical. It could be literally a person, but if you look at the top right, they're zoomed in. So there's just a big creature that kind of walks by. Easily could be anything, but it's worth noting that it was like out in the middle of nowhere. Not in the middle of nowhere, like obviously, but it was in the metro parks, and there's just a guy in what looks like a very thick suit. It could be a prank, but it's just one of those random. I mean, it does just happen to be in the one spot where you could see somebody. So somebody could just hang out and move around. But it's very cool.
But there could be other ones right there too that we can't see because they're behind the nest.
That is always a thought that. Like I've actually heard that, like it's just like when you see one, there's usually like a bunch more that kind of can figure out the whole thing. So that's all the random sightings I have. These are just the ones I kind of noted, was like, oh, these are kind of cool. I'm sure there's like way more, and I'm sure somebody could be like, oh, this one. And a lot, like I said, my favorite stories are usually the ones that are like personal stories that they're like kind of telling you how it felt and how it was cool, because those actually excite me, and I'm like, no way, tell me more about that weird thing.
Yeah, because you could really, ask them, what was the weather like? How were you feeling? What were you doing? What did it make you feel like when you saw it? What happened afterwards? And or where do you think it went when it disappeared? Like how
follow up.
And you get their whole you just watching a video just gives you that little bit of context. You don't really know.
Because I would be way more interested, instead of seeing that video of the Bigfoot being like like you were saying, like what was it like when, like, where did he go when he ducked down, instead of like them being like, oh my god, I think that I'd be more inclined to be like, oh my gosh, so like it was crazy, I was just we went down and I saw him again, but I didn't get it on video, like stuff like that, where it's just like there's little details that like give away just like a lot of cool stuff.
Like when you were running away, did you turn back around and see anything? What did you see then? That's not on the camera.
Yeah,
could you smell it? Could you, like what? There's so many more questions to ask.
Even like an audio, like voice, like a whatever, usually doesn't sound as interesting as it does when they go like, no, it's not going to come through on video, but like that, you felt that, like it's like when somebody when you hear somebody fire a gun in person versus them firing a gun like on the movies, you're like, that's a different sound altogether.
Yeah, it's like you feel it, you feel the air move around it,
You go like, cool, you kind of like jerk back if you're not.
Yeah, it's like being around like a marching band and like the bass drum comes by and you hear that thump thump. Or being at a concert or something, you feel.
Like watching live music on like the TV versus like watching it in person. You're just like, well, this is the best thing I've ever experienced. And then you go see them, or you're like listening to it on like YouTube, and you're like, this is a cool concert. Like, I enjoy this, but it just doesn't fill your space the way it's supposed to. So
yeah, so with the video, you just get one aspect, or or even with the concert, if you have the video and you're watching your favorite band on your TV, with the sound down. It's like, oh, this is cool. I know these songs, but like when you're there, you're part of the experience,
Yeah, you also don't get extra things like when we went to go see like Steel Panther, and afterwards I was just like, we were drinking. I was drinking a lot, and I was just like, I'm gonna go around, and I hugged, or not, I took a selfie with every single person there. I was like, you want to take a selfie? And they're like, hell yeah, bro. It's like, hell yeah. They got like 300 pictures of people.
Yeah, they're like, who is this guy, and why does he want a selfie? And they're like, who cares? Let's do it.
My favorite thing is I took a picture with somebody, and they literally the next day were like, dude, that's you. That's my friend, like, Eric or whatever. Because I just grabbed people and was like, take a picture with me.
I remember walking out of there. My brother was just like, where's Dave? And I'm like, he's taking pictures with people. And he's like, does he know them? And I'm like, nope.
Absolutely not. Listen, I'm nothing. I'm not a good time.
Yeah, I mean, you're not. They don't call you the human golden retriever for no reason,
I'm just here to have a good time, and if I'm not having a good time, I'm just kind of like, okay, like we could have probably done something better than this. It's fine.
It's like, we'll get them the next time.
Yeah. Oh wait, did I have one more? Oh, I did have one more. I'm sorry. Oh, I was going to talk about the the one that I thought was pretty cool. Which I don't know if this one's been disproven. I think this is the one. Yeah. This is the one from the train that I just like love. We talked about it last week. We talked about it last week, but I just thought it was a very cool. Hold on, we got little ad for whatever this is. They're trying to sell me. This I couldn't find anything but like the news one. But where they're on the train and they're just kind of they're filming from the train. So I mean, it could easily just be a guy in the middle of nowhere, but like that space is very far away and kind of in, I guess, is this where it is though? Like right behind him is a town. I thought it was in the middle of nowhere. Maybe I'm a little lighter on this one now that I'm looking at it the other way. Unless that wasn't what that was. But he's all the way up on the mountain and he's just kind of trekking through. It doesn't seem like he doesn't have a backpack on. He doesn't have snowshoes on. He's just walking through. I don't know if they're going to show it. Oh, here we go. Is this even it? Okay, this is a totally different thing. I think it's just the beginning part. So this guy right here, that's just kind of like walking about. So it's just the beginning of this clip. So I didn't get the most interesting part, but he was like walking across. But yeah, I the fact that stuff still keeps popping up, the people keep seeing them in that capacity. I don't understand how something that big can hide, regardless of its abilities, without being something that's maybe a little supernatural to me personally. But I will take Cliff's advice, where he was yelling at people saying, "Don't say it's supernatural because you're really messing up our ability to claim it as a real animal."
Yeah,
sorry.
And that's and you know this, but that's kind of where I'm at. I think that the simplest explanation's likely the right one, and it's just an animal that's out there that we haven't really discovered yet. But and I'm open to being wrong too. So
yeah,
if it's whatever, but I'm going to go with that until I see otherwise. But
yeah, I mean, it makes total sense.
I've never seen a moose in person. Are mooses moose real? I don't know.
I keep getting all these videos of like what are they? Are they just called moose when there's more than one of them?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I see like.
I mean, we'd know if we saw them more often.
Yeah, I know. We're not in that area. But like, are they gigantic? Like, are they like the biggest things? I mean, no. I guess I've seen mounted ones. How big can they get?
They're pretty big.
I've seen ones where they're like the biggest things ever. I'm like, surely this is photoshopped, but I'm like, or whatever. This is altered somehow. And then I'm just like, but like, do they get that big? And I never know if I'm being stupid or if I'm right. Also, again, I haven't seen it before, so it's just wild.
Yeah. I think that they can get pretty big. Pretty big.
Pretty. I mean, like these are like unreal though. And then like one's just walking. And I just remember seeing like video, and this guy was just like, it was this video of this like just absolutely enormous moose, and then they cut to a guy being like, wait a minute, is that how big moose are? And so I was in his boat like, I don't know, is that how big they are? I have no idea.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you'd be pretty surprised. I mean, just you think about going to the county fair or something. We've all seen normal size horses. Then you go see like a Clydesdale or something. You go like, this horse is like twice as big as regular horse.
I guess the biggest problem is that like they're hiding versus like the Clydesdale. It's just kind of like, I'm a horse.
Yeah.
So it's just like, why are they hiding? Like, surely I feel like if something that big and scary, it can just easily just be like, ah, and then be like, all right, I'm not gonna bug you. They don't. I think their stealth tactics are unneeded when they could just be big and scary.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna pull that thread a little bit, I just because I think I'm more inclined to believe that it's more of like a practical thing, but the fun part of me wants them to be maybe more supernatural. So their ability to kind of maybe vibrate between parallel universes, if we just want to kind of follow that path, I think is a fun idea. Because usually when weird stuff's happening, like the Mothman or something that's like similar to that, there usually tends to be like a couple things that happen, like UFOs and everything. But I'm totally ready. I think I just saw John Oliver where they were talking about UFOs, and they were just kind of like, let's be ready to find out that this is maybe more boring than we're led to believe. And I don't remember.
Disappointing.
I know, and I was just like, yeah, you're right. Like, I think everybody's expecting it to be this like, oh my gosh, like from another whatever, and maybe it's just a government research thing, and it's just like, well, that's no fun. Like, if I find out it's just a guy named Steve, I'll be so upset.
Yeah, that'll be really disappointing. But I think that when it comes to UFOs and things like that, we know like for a fact when they had like the U-2 spy plane and the stealth fighter, the stealth bombers and things like that, we had that stuff like decades before people knew about it, because they kept it in hiding. The whole point was that we didn't want our enemies to know, what they were. And then eventually, it came out like the U-2 got shut down, and when the Gulf War came around, we had to, fly some of those stealth fighters and stuff and park them over in like Saudi Arabia, and people started to see the stealth bombers and stuff. But, those were around a while before we saw them. I think a lot of the stuff people see are experimental planes. They're either ours or other people's. But there's, even if that makes up 85% of what people are seeing, there's still 15% that nobody knows what the heck it is,
What if we find out there's just like a fleet of Bigfoot that they're releasing? Yeah. Oh, thank God, that'd be so metal. You're just like fucking, just playing John Fogerty, like just like out of a helicopter, just send like 6 big feet, and they're I don't know, big feet, and they're
Yeah.
just like, and they just like America #1 after that.
maybe Bigfoot is a super soldier, you know.
Yeah, drop some of those guys into Russia. We win that war like one day. Like
Yeah.
took Putin's head.
They run around and scare everybody.
Dude, that'd be so wild. Be like, sorry, you guys found out about our secret Bigfoot, program. My bad.
Yeah.
We just have these giant apes. It'd be like they were fantastical. It's just they were doing training drills, and that's where the things you caught. The first, like, agent #1 was, the Patterson Gimlin film guy.
Yeah,
he got fired because he was obviously really bad at his job. He was out in the middle of nowhere, out in broad daylight.
Back at headquarters are like, damn it, Patty got spotted on video. What are we gonna do now? Everybody's gonna know.
Everyone,
let's just say it's not real. Let's just let's gaslight everybody. Even though it's on camera.
Yeah, like looks like a guy in the suit to me.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of some of the stuff going back to the UFO things, like back when after Roswell and all that, and they talk about the government and the misinformation and them saying the stuff's real, the stuff's not real, just to kind of confuse everybody so nobody knows what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could be something like that,
Yeah, who knows? I mean, if it's I think that, again, I can't go back to enough to like. Well, I love hearing people's like theories though. Like those are my favorite to be like. And I think I subscribe almost like probably more than anything if I was going to go very practical with it, that they go underwater. Because I think that there's like an underwater, like, what is it called when you go up, down and then up into like an open area.
Mm-hmm.
That a cavern or whatever. I think there's something to that, because you could just you could easily just like do that and become undetected. But I don't know how many of these things are happening near water like that often. That is like because I think that usually that kind of anomaly usually happens in like a big lake, like Salt Fork, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they could dig them themselves. From what I've heard, they're pretty good at that.
Yeah, cause, I mean, it wouldn't have to be that big. You could just have a little pond or something. Dig a little hole in there.
Yeah, as long as you get a pond, I guess. But you'd have to go down and then up, and then give yourself enough. You can just make your own little spider hole. I'm sure they're pretty good at that kind of stuff. You know what a spider hole is?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah. I saw a guy on YouTube make one, and he was like, "This is the most scary thing I've ever been in my life." Just being underground. He's like, I know why they call it a spider hole, because there's lots of spiders in here now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like with deer or bear, living in the woods, they find shelter, they dig holes, they get into little cracks in the caves, and they survive out there. Even not too like far from we live, or not so much you because you're down by the park, but I mean, I see deer walking around my neighborhood every now and again. It's like, where do they come from? Just walking through town.
I was hit one backing up out of my driveway yesterday. Like I literally backed up, and like I live close to a park, but not like to the level where I would run into a deer. Like that. Like that's not the kind of space I live in. I was just like, what the heck? Like I saw it on the.
There was 8 deer in your front yard the other night. What are you talking about?
I know. I just like didn't expect them to be like I was just like, oh, I was so sad if I would have hit the deer, because I see them so often, like because they're always around, that I kind of giving them names based off of Parks and Rec. I'm like, that's Ron Swanson. There's April.
What was the donkey on Parks and Rec?
I forget. Yeah, Little Sebastian.
Little Sebastian.
Was he the mayor? Oh no, it was the kid. That was what's his character.
Little Sebastian.
They'd always talk about like Little Sebastian. He was so beloved.
There were a couple of years ago or maybe it was last year, I remember, when Hollywood had like the writers' strike and like the actors' strike, and they were all out striking, and they were getting together. Different shows would strike together, with the little people. Most of the Parks and Rec cast was out picketing, like on the picket line, and they had Little Sebastian out there with them. And I thought that was so funny.
That's because Little Sebastian's the man of the people. He gets it.
Yeah. So funny.
I love that. Oh man. But yeah, I don't know. Like, do you have any specific sightings you want to talk about, or I don't know if you have anything.
There's one that I'm totally like obsessed with, that it's so fantastical, but I think it's so crazy. It's got to be real, because otherwise you just be like, this is insane. But it's the Albert Osman abduction from 1924, and we touched on this for a minute back when we had Maxim on the show, and obviously there's no video of it or anything like that. So I
1920s.
So it's more just this guy's word, but this guy was a prospector up in British Columbia. He's camping alone out doing his prospecting thing, and he's sleeping at night, and a Bigfoot comes and snags him up in his sleeping bag and carries him away. And the guy says he carried him for like 3 or 4 hours, and then basically takes him back to where the Bigfoot lives, where he's got like it's the mom and a couple of kids, in their little setup that they have. And essentially, they keep him hostage for like 6 or 7 days.
Yeah.
And they didn't like do anything to him. And he talks, and there's this happened in 1924. He didn't talk about it until like mid 1950s, because he was like, well, people are going to think I'm nuts. And it's like, this is a pretty nutty story. But he says basically, because they're like, why didn't you like try to escape or run away? And he's like, well, I didn't feel like I could leave. He was like, they weren't like treating me poorly or doing anything, but he's like, you could tell that they wanted me to be there, but he's like, I felt like I couldn't really leave.
Okay.
So he still had his sleeping bag and had his little setup, and he was, had a little fire cooking, and they're like eating sweet grass and stuff, but I don't know whether they were just trying to take care of him. They thought he was just out on his own, or like, hey, we live in little tribes and we'll bring you in, or what. But so after like 6 days or so, he's like, I got to get the heck out of here. And he, like the male Bigfoot ended up getting into his chewing tobacco, ate the whole can of it or whatever, ended up getting sick.
Yeah.
And while it was like running off, distracted by the sickness, he picked this crap up and he hightailed it out of there, and then didn't say nothing to anybody for years.
Yeah.
And then finally talked about it. But there's I've heard a couple recordings of interviews that he did from like the mid 60s where he talked about this, and this guy's long dead now, but I'm like, that story is insane.
Yeah.
They kidnap you in your sleeping bag. They don't hurt you. They just he carries you back to his homestead and cooks you some meals. You hang out. You're there for 6 days. I don't know what the heck you do for 6 days. You're scared out of your mind. But like he said, he's like, I didn't ever feel like I could leave, but they weren't hurting me or anything. And then finally, he found his way out when the Bigfoot ate his chewing tobacco and got sick, and then he books it out of there and leaves, and then doesn't tell anybody for 25 years. It's like on your first thought, you're like, that is like so fake. There's nothing about that actually happened. But you're like, why would you say that?
It's so specific.
Thing. That you got away because of your chewing tobacco. And the other thing too is I think they said that he had in his sleeping bag, like he had some of his gear, including a gun that he didn't use because he was like, I never felt like I needed it because they weren't hurting me.
Yeah.
But he was there if he needed it, kind of a thing. So it was like, you didn't shoot these things, you didn't try to get away for 7 days, you didn't do this stuff, but like you talked about them like preserving leaves and eating grass, and it's so weird that it's like, if you were gonna make something up, like why would you make that up? Like that's just so dumb.
Yeah,
so
just
to me,
say just say you didn't have your gun, kind of thing, I didn't have it, instead of like, oh, I had it, but I didn't feel like I needed to use it. But maybe they gave him like a sense of calm, obviously I can't leave, but also like I don't think anything's gonna happen to me. And so maybe that's part of it. I've always heard about, if you believe any of this at all, but like that there's like alien sightings where they kind of give you a sense of like, I'm not here to hurt you, kind of thing. Maybe that's kind of like the same jam where they're just kind of like, we're not here to hurt you. Or if they don't do that at all, maybe just kind of with their mannerisms, like when an animal is like on the ready to attack you, they kind of show it with their body. Maybe at no point where they're doing that, they're just like, you're here now. And you're like, okay.
Maybe this male was just like, oh, you're the size of my kid, you're out here sleeping by yourself, I'll take you back to my place and take care of you. Get you one nice warm meal, and you have some protection around the rest of the family. You have built-in friends, all that kind of stuff. But And then,
it's great.
This guy goes back home and they're like, hey, hey Dan, how was your prospecting? Oh, it's fine. Nothing happened. I didn't realize you were going to be on for 6 days.
I like to think that, like, because I've heard this a couple times, and I always think this is like the most interesting thing, that when people like have crazy stuff happen, they just don't talk about it like you think you would. Like, you just kind of go like, huh. And then, like, if something crazy happens, like at night, like somebody sees something, they're just like, oh my gosh, and they go to bed like a half an hour later, and like, we just went back to bed, and I'm just like, you went back to bed? What are you talking about? You just had the scariest thing happen to you, and you're just like,
Well, I mean, people do that with trauma all the time. Something like real bad happens, and they just kind of like package that up, bury it in the back of their mind, and pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, I obviously didn't.
You're just embarrassed to tell the story, especially I would think back then. I mean, now there's so many shows and so many things to talk about Bigfoot and aliens and whatever. Even though most people still think you're nuts if you talk about it, there's at least a group of people out there that are like, we're open to listening to what you're talking about. But
you can find a Facebook group.
Really, yeah. Back then you come back and you're like, I got abducted by a family of Bigfoot for 6 days, and they're like, all right, this guy's nuts.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't even know what to call it. You wouldn't even know what to call it back then. You would have been like, we get captured by a what is it, a monkey person, or whatever, or like a family of gorilla thing. But it wasn't a monkey, it was a man. But and they're like, okay, Roger.
What are you gonna say? And then this guy, part of the other list of many things that people don't think this was real was that he didn't talk about it till there was some of the other sightings that had happened. And then he was like, oh, actually, this happened to me, 25, 30 years ago. And they're like, oh, and now you're coming out of the woodwork,
It's like, but you've shaped context for me. I'm like, oh, got it.
Yeah. Well, now that a couple other people have said this has happened, I don't feel as weird about it,
Yeah, I'm not alone in the world.
Yeah. And like I said, I think people do that with trauma all the time. It's like you don't talk about things that happen to you until you end up in a room with somebody else who that's happened to, and then you share your stories or whatever. But
I'd be curious to know if anybody has been actually like killed by these things before. Like we would obviously have no proof of that, like, and that would be almost like non-existent. Like no one would be, that would be no one's first thought, that like, oh, I bet this was a Bigfoot, and that person would be, probably rightly fired as a detective if that's like where he thought it, unless there was like just irrefutable proof, like this person was ripped in half. Like,
but even then they're just going to go right to like bear attack or something like that. They're, it was a pack of wild dogs, coyotes, something,
I mean, I was listening to a story that I thought was really interesting, and it was a guy who was like a really good hunter. It was a series of like, cool hunter stories, but like, or cool, maybe not cool to them, but interesting to me at 3 a.m. But this guy is like a really, really proficient hunter, and he always goes out every single year, and he goes and like, hunts and does this whole thing, and then he comes back. This one time he didn't come back, and then they go to look for him. They can't find his body anywhere, and they find his boots on like a hillside. And then they find his like backpack like 5 miles away, just like sitting on like maybe not even 5 miles, maybe longer than that. But he was nowhere to be found, and he wouldn't have left his boots because you obviously need your boots. Because it's the middle of the winter.
The last things you'd leave.
Yeah. So it's like, if we're gonna, we're in the topic, but if that was a Bigfoot that kind of killed this guy, and they kind of presented his boots, presented his backpack. His backpack was on a stump, maybe about 400 feet away from a house. So the guy was just like, the guy they've been looking for months, his backpack has just been sitting there on my like stump that's like not close enough to my house to like, we don't go up there. He's like, so it was just, but he was just there. Like he just like stopped and like was like looking at us like over there, or like, but like without his shoes. Like it was just like they were trying to figure that out, and then we're basically like, one of the deposits of an idea was like, what if it was a Bigfoot? And I would be interested to know what the thinking was, if we're gonna bring that to its full conclusion. Say like, does it put the boots there to go like, he was here but he's dead? Here's his backpack. He was here, but he's dead. In case you're looking for him, I ate him, or whatever they do.
I came across this dead body. I thought somebody might be able to reuse these boots in this bag. So,
Oh, how
it's
nice
like
of them.
the local donation spot.
I didn't think of it like that. They just
No.
found his body, but they
Yeah.
just were like, "Oh, we reduce, reuse, recycle here."
Yeah. They're like, I've been checking out this family down there. This guy down here needs a new set of boots, so I'll just drop these off in this yard and see what happens.
What a kind
Maybe,
folk.
maybe
Oh
they'll
man,
maybe they'll give me some food, in exchange for this backpack and these boots.
made it so warm-hearted. That's fantastic.
Meanwhile, the thing, it killed him and ate him and was showing off. Like, don't come in here.
You know
These
what?
are my woods.
I'm on team. He found the body and hit it.
Mhm.
Now, because I like the story of him being like, "You guys need these boots?" He just puts them on a thing. They might need a backpack. There's stuff in here. It's a whole tent.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of supplies. I can't use them, but maybe you guys can.
Yeah, it's like, well, I did take one thing. There's a granola bar.
There was a couple pieces of food, a can of snuff,
Yeah, I ate the snuff. I almost threw up.
Tastes like crap, but not gonna do that again.
Yeah, my cousin ate this once. He threw up, and then they lost their toy.
Yeah, they lost their toy.
This does not end well. I know.
They drop him in the swamp, and they just throw sticks at him. Maybe that's what was going on in that other video.
Just bring it all together. This Skun Cape's like, dude, my favorite thing to do, just throw it at his head. He's like, they just think there's a swamp here. This guy down there. Skun Cape is a dick. I'm sorry that he's going through the hurricane right now, but he is a dick.
Yeah, he's kind of dickish, I think.
What you gonna do?
Yeah.
Just hit him in the head.
Yeah.
He's just like, "Wait, tell me what to do." Yeah. So, all right. Well, did you have any more stories? I don't know.
Actually, I have a couple, but maybe we could save them for next week or next time we get into it, because there's a couple good ones that are going to take quite a bit of time, I think, to talk about. So.
Okay. Yeah. We'll bank them, and then we'll have like another Bigfoot thing. And we need nothing but content now. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been our Bigfoot chat. I just want to say that it is officially soup season. It is the good weather for it. I just made some bacon potato soup, and it was amazing. It basically I made it so thick it pretty much was just mashed potatoes. So I tried to eat it the next day, and I was just like, "This is so thick," but it was the best. Yeah. And I'm currently listening to a band called Royal Otis, and they're amazing. So check them out if you're not. And what are you listening to, Brian?
Well, you know me, I go back to the tried and true. I was rage driving on the way home from work today, listening to classic Megadeth. So that was
I love that. All right. Well, the kitchen is closed. We thank you for joining us in this lovely dining scenario. We appreciate you all. Check us out on Monster Soup Podcast on Facebook. If you guys have any personal stories, I would love for you to share them with me, and we'll get you on the show. That is Monster Soup Podcast at gmail.com. You can email me there, and we'll talk to you and all the things. It'll be super fun. And
we should be back live next week.
We should be back live next week doing all the fun stuff. So, I'll be going camping this week. It's a pre-record. So I apologize that you can't talk to us in real time. Also join us every Friday at 5:00. That's usually our live time, and just kind of get in the chat, have some fun times. All right. I appreciate you guys.
See you.
Bye. Bye.